Hi Silem stars, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, please subscribe down below and join the Silem stars. In today's video, I'm going to show you guys how to make a corset jumpsuit with a basque waistline. I have tons of corset tutorials on my channel, so I'm going to leave the link to my corset tutorials playlist in the description box down below. I also have a corset online class. For those of you that are completely new when it comes to making a corset, you can register for the class. I'm going to leave the link to register in my pin comments down below. Okay, so without further ado, let's get right into this video on how to make a corset jumpsuit with a basque waistline.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you there.
Okay, since I have tons of corset tutorials, I'm not going to focus on the making of the corset. I'm going to focus on the making of the trouser, as well as how to join the trouser to the corset to make a jumpsuit. Now the length of my trouser is 42 inches, so that's what I'm just marking there. I'm just marking the baseline. Now if I was making just the trouser, the crotch depth of my client would be 10 inches, but because this is a jumpsuit, I'm adding 2 inches to that to make it 12 inches. Her hip circumference is 39.5 inches. Okay, now at the waistline or the baseline, I just went in by 1 inch from the fold, but on the crotch line I marked that fold. Now I divided her lap circumference by 2 and I marked that on the crotch line, and then I added just 1 inch allowance to that. But then on the waistline, I just divided her waist circumference by 4. I marked that on the waistline, and then I added 2 inches allowance for my darts. Now I'm just drawing a diagonal line to connect those points I marked close to the fold. And then I measured the distance from the waist to the crotch. I got the midpoint of that. And then I drew a straight line from the waist to that midpoint. But then from the midpoint to the point I marked on the crotch line, I just drew a curve to connect those 2 points. Now for the width of the bottom part of my trouser, I'm just marking 11 inches. So that's how wide the hem of the trouser is going to be. If you want it wider, you can go as much as 15 inches. If you want it narrower, you can go lower. If you want it to be a pencil trouser, you can go down as low as 6 inches, but it shouldn't be less than 6 inches for an adult. Okay, so I'm just connecting I'm just connecting the points on the crotch line to that hemline, and now I'm just going to go ahead to cut along those lines. Now after cutting it, this is what we have. Now I'm going to fold my fabric again so I can cut my back piece. I just placed the front piece on top of my folded fabric now. And now what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to make sure I have at least 5 inches of the fabric, and then I'm just going to go ahead and cut, a straight line from the top to the bottom of the folded fabric, okay? Making sure that the excess I have is at least 5 inches. Now I'm just cutting the rest of the folded fabric so that it matches the outline of my front piece, okay? Now what I'm going to do now is I'm just marking 1.5 inches on all the areas above the crotch line, okay? Marking this on the folded fabric, okay? And then on all the areas below the crotch line, okay, so all the way down to the hem, I'm just marking 2 inches allowance, okay? So remember, 1.5 inches above the crotch line and 2 inches for all the areas below the crotch line. Now I'm just going to mark that same crotch line on my back piece there, and then above the crotch line I'm going to mark 4 inches upwards, okay? 4 inches upwards. And then below the crotch line I'm going to mark 5 inches downwards, okay? Now I'm just going to draw a line to connect all those points I marked all the way to that point I marked. So the 4 inches from the crotch line up and the 5 inches from the crotch line down. I'm just going to mark those points, and then I just cut out the excess fabric. Okay, now I'm just folding that allowance to make sure that it aligns with the front piece, and then I'll fold it until I get to that crotch where you have the crotch, and I want to see the exact point where the folded fabric meets the crotch point. Does that make sense? So once I get that point, I'm just going to mark it with my chalk. Okay, it's very important that you do this so you get the exact point and your trouser fits nicely. Now once you get that point, just mark 3 inches from that crotch point, 3 inches, and then connect it all the way to the line you marked below the crotch line and above the crotch line. And when you're done with that, simply just cut along that line. And this is it, guys. This is how to draft a simple palazzo trouser for a jumpsuit. Okay, it's very, very easy. Now we're going to go ahead and mark where we want to put our pockets. Now from the side, I'm just marking 4 inches, and then from the waist down, I'm marking 6 inches. Now I'm just going to create notches on those points only on the front pieces. You know that we have 2 front pieces and 2 back pieces. So I'm creating these notches only on the front pieces. And now I'm just going to fold it and then go ahead and iron that flat. Okay, now measuring the entire length of my front piece, I'm just going to get the midpoint of that and then create a notch, because that is where I'm going to put my darts. Now this notch is created on both the front pieces and the back pieces. Now moving on to my pockets, I'm just folding my piece of fabric. Now the width of my pocket while folded is 7 inches, but the length is 10 inches. So that's what you want to have, 7 inches width and 10 inches length when folded. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and just connect those 2 points with a straight line. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a curve on the bottom corner. Okay, just going to round out that edge, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. I'm going to cut 2 pieces of this, so I'm going to use this one as a template to cut the second pocket. Okay, so these here are my 2 pockets that I've cut out that I'm going to be attaching to my trouser. Now I'm going to go ahead and weave all the edges of my pockets to make it easier for me. I also weave the edges of my trouser, all the trouser pieces. Now where I have my darts, I'm just going to go ahead and draw that line there. Okay, the length of my dart is 5 inches long, and then the dart width is ½ inch. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew my darts on all 4 pieces. Okay, and once I'm done, this is what I'm going to have. Can you see what it looks like? Now this is one of my front pieces. Okay, so now the part of my trouser front piece that I had notched for my pocket, I'm just folding it the same way I folded it before. I'm also folding my pockets. Now the side of my pocket that is not folded should match with the side of my trouser that is actually folded. Does that make sense? Now place the pocket under the trouser piece and then go ahead and mark that fold on the pocket. So the fold we have on the front piece, we're just marking that on the pocket. Now once we have that done, I'm just going to go ahead and cut along the fold on my trouser and also cut that same line on my pockets. Okay, so cut both of them, and now make sure that the right side of the pocket faces the right side of the fabric. Okay, which is what I'm doing now. The right side of the pocket must face the right side of the fabric, and I'm going ahead to sew it with ½ inch seam allowance. You can actually go as low as ½ inch seam allowance. You don't really need a lot of allowance for this. Now once you're done, open it up. Make sure that the allowance is facing the pockets. Okay, make sure the allowance is facing the pockets, and then go ahead and top stitch that in place. And after doing that, you're going to have this very, very neat. Now you want to turn the trouser to the wrong side, fold the pockets just the way I'm showing you. Okay, and after folding it, flip the trouser back to the right side. Okay, and then go ahead and sew the pocket to the trouser on the top, that's on the waist, and on the sides. So on the top here and on the sides. Okay, and also take the pocket and just sew and close the bottom part of the pocket with ½ inch seam allowance. Now do this for the other front piece as well. Also go ahead and attach the pocket for the second front piece. Now when you finish attaching the pockets, place your back piece on the table and place the matching front piece. So make sure that the sides of your back piece and your front piece aligns, and then go ahead and join it with 1-inch seam allowance. So by the side, I mean the side that does not have the crotch. Okay, so make sure that the front piece and the back piece aligns. So place them and join them together. Do that for the other front piece and back piece. And now place the two pieces on top of each other, right sides facing. Okay, you will see that the front pieces are now on one side and the back pieces are now on the other side. Now go ahead and sew from the waist to the crotch. Don't sew all the way down to the hem, but just stop at the crotch. So from the waist all the way to the crotch. Do that for both sides with 1/2-inch seam allowance. And once you're done, you're going to have this. Now hold the seams that you have, the two seams, okay, at the top and at the bottom. And once you flip it, you're going to realize that your trouser is literally ready, okay? It's almost done. So all you have to do now is just align the crotch of the front piece and the back piece together. So make sure that the crotch seam aligns, okay? Very important. Open up the seam allowance, okay? You can go ahead and pin the crotches together so that they stay in place. So once you have that aligned, all you have to do now is sew from the crotch all the way to one hem with 1/2-inch seam allowance, and sew from the crotch all the way to the other hem with 1/2-inch seam allowance. And once you're done, you're going to have this. When we turn this to the right side, this is what we are going to have. Our trouser is literally ready. To create the jumpsuit, we need our corset. What I'm going to do now to create that basque waistline is align the center of the basque of my corset with the seam line on my center front of my trouser. Does that make sense, guys? And also align the side of my corset with the side seam of my trouser. And once I have that aligned, I'm just marking that basque waistline. So that outline, I'm just marking it, that V shape. Once I take it out, this is what I'm going to have. Now I'm going to go ahead and sew along that line. Now after sewing, I'm going to mark 1/2-inch above that seam line. So above that V line that I sewed, I'm just marking 1/2-inch above that. So once I'm done marking that, I'm just going to go ahead and cut along that 1/2-inch mark that I drew. Okay, so just cut along the 1/2-inch mark. Don't cut on the first line you sewed on, but cut along the 1/2-inch mark allowance. Now once you're done with that, open up that back seam line, because that's where you're going to insert your zipper. You need a zipper for this jumpsuit, so you insert your zipper there. So just open that up and then go ahead and place your corset right sides facing with your trouser. Make sure that the midpoints of the corset matches with the midpoint of the trouser, so that basque waistline point, make sure that it matches. And then sew from the basque, from that midpoint all the way to one side, so all the way through to the back. So make sure that the corset gets all the way to the back of your trouser, and then from that midpoint again of the corset, sew all the way to the other back. Okay, does that make sense? So just sew from the midpoints all the way to one end, and from the midpoints all the way to the other end. And I'm going to show you guys how I do that on my sewing machine. So as you can see now, I'm just joining it from the midpoint and I'm sewing this all the way to the other end. Now note that I've already put in my boning in my corset, so my corset is literally ready. Okay, so I've already put in my boning before joining this to my trouser. Now when I get to the side seam of my corset, I made sure to open the seam allowance. Okay, so do that for both sides. And once I'm done, this is what we have. My corset jumpsuit is looking really good. This is what the back is. I went ahead to put in eyelets and a modesty panel. And this is the finished look, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.